team. Welcome to episode 143 of Transition Talk, where we talk about dental transitions and how to navigate the sometimes messy path to practice ownership. As you prepare to purchase or sell a practice, you have to consider some key variables when it comes to marketing and patient retention. New ownership can cause some concerns among patients, but don't worry. By doing some planning, due diligence, you can feel prepared for this piece of the puzzle and ensure that patients and you handle the transition stress-free. In this episode, we explore marketing considerations and how to plan for patient changes after that switch up in ownership. But before we get going, hello, Mr. Loretto.
Did you just say handle a transition stress-free?
I did.
Oh, God.
I know. Optimistic here.
That is about the most
land.
optimistic thing I think I've ever heard you say. I wish that this business could be a little bit more on the stress-free side, but this is why we get paid the big bucks,
maybe it's relatively, like stress-free relatively to if you did not do due diligence
I love
and
that.
prepare.
Relatively compared to all the others.
Like you don't even know what it
kill
could
each other.
be.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Boom. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. It's just, January here. You're listening to this in some other time, but it's January here.
Yeah.
Post-holiday, ready to go on some travel here in a minute.
We're going to hang out together.
We're going to hang out.
We're going to be
lot.
like buddies, like side by side. So as a group, there's a bunch of people that run all these organizations, and we're going to all get together and go down to Mexico and have these little homes and sit around in the morning and have meetings and discuss the company's future growth and goals and all the optimism that we have and excitement, stress-free growth.
But I would say, it sounds like, they're just going to go to Mexico. But I actually think as a leader and as leaders, to be able to get away from like the day-to-day of both your professional life and your personal life and focus on kind of creating that white space to allow yourself to like plan and grow is really, really important. And I think we found so much value in it the last few years of doing it. We've been doing it longer than I have, but to be able to kind of go and kind of collectively, everyone kind of have nothing else on your calendar but those times is so valuable.
Well, we're kind of away from everything, and it's just that ability. Not only do we have these meetings from call it 9 to 1, but now we're discussing that further in our lunches, or maybe we're in walks that morning and talking about something, or the afternoon excursions. But it's really good. And in a partnership, for those that do go down the partnership road, either the sellers that are considering or the buyers that are considering this process, it's hard. And it's a lot easier to overcome future obstacles with people that you kind of know and trust. And some of that, I would just say, furthering our relationship happens to happen, when you're on a vacation kind of business strategy meeting like that. And so
for sure. But I would say if you're listening and you own a business, you own a practice, making sure you kind of set aside some time to kind of like be strategic and think about goals and kind of set intentions, especially at the beginning of a year, beginning of a cycle, whatever that looks like for your practice. Super, super valuable. I would highly recommend it.
And it's a tax deduction.
There you go.
It's a tax deduction.
When solving problems left and right.
It's just, come on. I mean, that's 5 reasons you own a business. Number 1, tax. So you get a tax deduction and having a corporate retreat, and you get to choose Mexico. This is why you own. That's why we own, Christy. That's why you own.
Well, this episode is about marketing and patient retention. I mean, clearly one of the primary questions we get from buyers as they buy a business is, and their concern is, well, what happens if all the patients leave? Right? And clearly that's a dramatic thing to say. It's not out of the realm that it could happen, right? But it's very, very rare that you actually lose patients. And that's clearly because yes, will you have patients that will go away, or they really love the old doctor and they see this as a time to kind of make a change, or maybe a hygienist leaves and so they follow that hygienist to another practice, whatever it might be. Yes, you're going to have those people. But what you also are going to have is you just took out a big loan, buyer, and you have a lot of energy, and you're going to change things up. So that energy and that kind of new perspective and your relationships and kind of what you're putting into the practice also creates growth of patients. And so while most of our clients that buy practices see growth, there's certainly ones that see kind of that net impact being zero. We have some people that fall off and we have some people that come on and kind of we stay stable. So it's not a concern, and we'll talk about some areas and times when it could be a concern. But before we get into that, I'd love to just get some thoughts from you on marketing. If I'm a new buyer who's kind of going into a practice, like what do I change when? What does that marketing time frame look like? What should they think about? What are your thoughts in this arena?
Listen, I agree that there's this anxiety that the buyer has with this process, and they think they're going to lose 20, 30, 40%. I mean, the number may be 10%, 5%, 8%. It's a small number, but like you said, if you attack this with I'm a new business and building a different brand and being able to go out and market differently, I just haven't seen those practices that were doing 700 collections and 2 years later they're still doing 7. If anything, they bought it at 700 collections and it's doing $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, $2 million. This is the consistent story we get to hear, not just from people that we don't have a formal relationship, but more importantly, the people that we have formal relationships with that go through the NDP process and then go to Kane Water's second. We get to see them and hear kind of that story post-close. But to address your question with regards to what I believe would be a critical kind of path for them is number one is when you're looking at a practice, you're diagnosing those active patients and you're trying to figure out what is that upside. You've done the chart audit. You can see they're referring out certain procedures. You can see maybe the number of new patients that they're getting. You can see the marketing efforts they have, the advertising efforts they have or don't have. And so you want to be able to look at that and then now have some type of strategy going into that close. Now, one of the things that's, I would say, most concerning for perhaps the practice patient pool would be is this new guy has all this debt, this new gal has all this debt, and he or she just is going to, quote unquote, overdiagnose. And so the patient's feeling like, okay, new guy, gal comes in and all of a sudden they're saying, I need all of this work. Why didn't my old guy tell me this? And so my approach to that would be from the very beginning that we need to have a just top of the line brand. So I want the website completely redone. I want it to be mobile friendly. I want it to discuss the clinical skills that obviously this new buyer has. I want it to be very technology driven at the practice. And I want the team to have this leadership to be able to communicate that the new buyer is bringing all of this technology. And because to me, it's the technology that is what is diagnosing perhaps something different, or it could be the clinical training, or it could be the procedures that that doctor has that's saying, yes, we're diagnosing this is what we need to do. There needs to be a reason. So I am a big, big proponent of coming in and looking at all the things that work. I don't want to make every single change, but to be able to work on that brand from the outside, the technology, and to slowly incorporate that team to really start to navigate all those relationships and conversations with all of the existing patients and new patients and kind of almost build up this buyer to be this clinical
master,
yeah. I think is a good way to describe it, and their knowledge and experience with technology. Because again, if person A is maybe taking an x-ray this way and person B is doing some type of x-ray that is different, using some type of different technology and showing and seeing things that weren't before, it's a lot easy for me as a patient to say, hey, this is what I need.
Yeah, and I think two things on that. First, as you mentioned, I think doing that kind of the right way and kind of rolling it out slowly is really important, right? Like in a transition, you're going to get about a year to use the prior practice or doctor's name. And so we don't want you to do that from day one, right? Like we want you to get some of the goodwill out of the name and the doctor's name that you just purchased. And so what we want though is for that strategic process or timeline of how am I going to roll out a new website? How am I going to roll out the new brand name? How am I going to roll out, a new way of how am I diagnosing? Because I think it's important that, one, like you mentioned, if a buyer just comes in hot and is doing everything immediately, the staff is going to be a little bit nervous. The patients are going to be a little bit nervous. But if it feels like a process and you allow both patients and your team, your new team, to buy in and feel like they're a part of it and feel like it's not just kind of an immediate, I turned a switch and all of a sudden now here is what it is. One, they're going to get a little defensive because change is hard for people, patients and team. And also they're going to feel as though maybe not even what the previous seller did was wrong, but maybe, they're just trying to be too aggressive. And we don't want to come across as that old doc was doing anything wrong because they probably weren't. Maybe they just had a different philosophy than you did, or they didn't have the technology like you're mentioning. And so I think it's being very strategic about that. If you have a year, you don't have to use the full year, but I probably would say around 6 months, you need to it'll probably take you that long anyway to kind of build up all this, to create the website. And then as you begin to roll that out, make sure it's communicated to the patients. Hey, this is what we're doing. And, maybe it's ABC Family Dentistry, formerly Dr. Smith and Associates or something like that. And that way you allow yourself to kind of make use of what you purchased from a goodwill perspective.
And from a buyer perspective, just know that that's a leadership that you have to put back on yourself. Those are going to be where you're now meeting with this 5 or 6 member team and telling them this is what we've done in the past, which has been amazing, and this is what we're going to do going forward. Here's how you're going to communicate that, and just to be able to lead that. And if that could be either A, you have that ability to kind of put that in place, or B, is there some type of outside consultant that you need to hire to help you with that communication and follow through. And one more thing to add there is it's difficult for the senior doctor when they are still involved in that practice and they're watching those changes in their 30-year journey. It's hard for them to see that this young person is now coming in and making changes, sometimes change for the better. Even though it's cool to see, it's also hard for them to see. And so for you as a young person, you need to be patient with that. And I would say to my senior doctor as well, you got to put yourself 30 years ago. You were that changing agent back then. And so just know that's going to happen when you are bringing this person in a partnership, or in this case, selling 100% to someone, and now you're still there. Be prepared for that change.
Yeah. I've even had clients who have brought the team in on some of those changes, like marketing or kind of how they're going to present. Because remember, how you present a case, like how you do all of these things, that is internal marketing, right? You are like creating your patients to be the internal kind of referral source for other new patients. And so I've even had clients who have brought their team in or their patient base in and maybe made it a contest about, here's the new track, we want to rename the practice, like give us some options. Or they've had the team, okay, tell us what we can do better to make internal referrals. And what you're doing by including the team or by including the patient base is you're really kind of creating a little community. And especially with your team, you're getting their buy-in. So they're part of it. They're not just being told what's changing, but they're getting a say in kind of how those changes happen. So I think that is really helpful with the right practice too.
You know what? I have to give you a compliment.
What?
You have done an amazing job leading your team.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and everything you were saying there made me think about your NDP team and how you've been able to lead. And because you're bringing all of those pieces together. And so
what are you going to ask me to do? I feel like there's an ask.
Joellen, get her a tissue right now. I can't believe I actually drew tears out of the eyes of Christy Ratcliffe, but let's clear that up. Clear it up, girl.
Okay, next question. Patient retention.
Yes.
So we have seen times when a practice does lose patient base. I want to be very clear that in these instances, it has been when either a buyer has not done diligence, when they've kind of come to us after, or they've been a Kane Waters client and been like, oh, like this is what happened, or they didn't put enough weight in something they knew, right? An example that I have a previous client who very interested in a practice. It was in a great location. They loved it. We were engaged. And the seller had a very high Vietnamese patient base. Mm-hmm. And the wife actually spoke Vietnamese, and the buyer knew this. They had done all the conversations, had the conversations, knew it was something, said, I'm not concerned about it. I'm pretty good. We kind of gave the caution of like, okay, are you sure? Yeah. Bought the practice, and a majority of that patient base left. Mm-hmm. And again, this is true of a lot of different factors: cultures, language, religious. If you have a patient base that is there because that doctor or caregiver provides that unique piece, right? Whether it be language or religion or culture, then you have to be very careful, because you coming in not being whatever that unique thing is a potential loss of patient base. And that is harder to fill if you're losing a majority of your patient base from that perspective.
Yeah, I'll put that in 3 buckets as far as people that don't have success. You mentioned due diligence. Mm-hmm. The broker said there were 2,000 active patients. You didn't do due diligence. You didn't go through charts. You didn't see what was active or not. You just trusted that. So that's 1. 2, you're not leading. You're not leading the team, and when you're not leading, they're not going to follow. And everything is going to fall down from that. 3, this other outside kind of unique could be the influence. It could be the example with Vietnamese. I can think about working with a surgeon that's a Orthodox Jewish surgeon. His community is 99% Orthodox Jewish. And so for him, as he expands, obviously that is going to be his candidate that he would bring in to continue to market to the population that is very, very unique to that part of New York. It's just very, very as an example, it's something that he would really need to think about as he continues to expand. And so those are things to certainly think about. Now we'll go to the positive side and to try to
Really
look
quick
at
before you go that, I want to add one more thing. So this is also true. Any seller that comes to NDP who doesn't have a buyer and they want to find a buyer, one of the questions we ask is like, who is the ideal person buyer for you, right? And give us all the details, right? Because this is also true if I'm looking for a buyer in like extreme South or West Texas. There are certainly cultures and patient bases where if I pluck someone from like New York, Wall Street, and they're wearing a suit every day, they're not going to really work with people who are on the oil fields every day, right? And again, nothing wrong with either of those. It's just like a sales guy. Sometimes you have to match the person to the personality of who the patient base is. And so I think that can that change? Sure. Can you see an opportunity and you say, I'm fine if a certain group of patients leave because they don't like me or we don't jive from a communication standpoint? Sure. But you have to have a plan for what happens when that. And the fault here is what happens if you don't recognize it and don't have a plan, right? Because those two things together are going to mean you're going to have a big drop in collections. And that's what you paid your value off of is profitability, right? So if you lose collections, we're losing profitability. And now we're in a stressful situation of having debt service that we potentially can't cover.
I can think of places like Alaska. I can think of places like Hawaii. I can think of places even like in Mississippi. I mean, those are hard places to penetrate as far as being the newbie, to that area. I can think about specialists that perhaps don't fit into what that little GP culture is. I told the story once before about the 6 old guys that were periodontists and the female wanted to come and they all said, we're not looking. And she absolutely crushed it. And she just said, I understand, but I'm going to beat the odds and knew how to market. There's different places. You just have to know, I have an obstacle here. And what is that risk to this? I think too, before we move on to things to be thinking about on the positive side is we hadn't talked about the referral base. So I think it's just something for us to talk about on the specialty side of when we've seen perhaps a specialist fail on an acquisition.
And I think when we talk about referral relationships, they are as important as a patient relationship in more of a GP kind of recall type practice. Understanding who your referrals are, understanding how the current seller or current owner has marketed to them, what kind of relationships do they have, why are they referring to that practice in particular, having that conversation and doing the diligence with the seller and asking like, do you think that they will refer to me, right? Like there are oftentimes a seller will say yes, no, they'll know them enough, but being able to kind of have a plan in place to market to those referral relationships is critical in the success of these specialty practices, especially if you don't have any other connections to the city in which you're purchasing the practice.
Yeah. A couple of things would be like the endodontist, straight 100% referral. I can think of a case where an endodontist bought a practice and the senior doctor had another practice 30 miles away. And was like, okay, I'm going to go over here. You can have this one. Well, what happened is the relationship that doctor had, he actually marketed to all of those GPs and said, hey, just send me your cases over here. That practice struggled. I can think about Perio, Pros, where we're buying perhaps that very strong referral-based GPs, very successful, high-end GPs that are doing $2, $3, $4 million and sending big cases. But on that referral base, these were a bunch of older doctors. So all the GPs, the example would be, were 5, 6 guys in their 70s referring to the 70-year-old periodontist, prosthodontist, and then how many more years do those 70-year-old GPs have? Because we're buying that relationship. Now, all of a sudden, that turns selling to someone else, and we're losing kind of those top 3, 4, 5 referrals that are driving maybe 60% of that business. So it's just important to actually do that level of due diligence to know where is that referral base coming from and what risk factors do I have with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And when we talk about in the next question, I have some additional things on referrals, but let's go to the positive aspects. We talked about losing patients and kind of how you can lose patient base if we're not doing our diligence and understanding kind of what those unique components are. On the flip side, I think it can also help you if you're a new buyer and you can bring something unique to the table. It can also help you gain patients, right?
100%.
Especially if I'm buying an orthodontic practice from a male and I'm the female coming in, then maybe that opens up a whole new layer of referrals or patient base that preferred a woman for whatever reason, right? Like those aspects can also be positive.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about this on the rehearsal, but I can remember a story where the Vietnamese periodontist bought the practice in the Northwest up in Seattle.
Oh.
And you remember her. And she was like, well, do you think, I'm like, what are you talking about? There's a huge Vietnamese population. What number of GPs are there? How many periodontists, how many females are there? She's like, none. I'm like, you're going to kill it.
Yeah.
We are going to buy this from this guy and you're going to get those referrals because you're awesome. And number two, you're going to be able to bring that family and culture to you. And so, yes. And she absolutely crushed it. So I think you have to look at it from that perspective as not just the patient base and the risk, but what is that opportunity perhaps that, converting to sell something else?
Yeah, I think it's figuring out there's two kind of forms of marketing when you are buying a practice, in my opinion. It's the maintain. Like, what do I need to do to ensure that I maintain the existing patient base? And then what do I bring to the table that potentially the old established owner did not have that I can then market to a new set of people?
That's right.
Of referrals, whoever that might be, to then expand and grow it. Again, understanding that you will probably have some people that will fall away or kind of decide they don't want to stay, and that's okay, right? We don't need every single person, but we need to make sure we're adding more than we're losing, and being able to kind of do both of those marketing tracks at the same time is important.
Yeah, I mean, from a referral-based standpoint, like a specialist, they typically will rate kind of a B or C type referrals. Your A's are obviously your best. And so in that case, from a due diligence, the opportunity is to at least acknowledge there's a risk on those 5 or 6 keys, but to ask hard questions to the buyer to say, hey, tell me about the B's and C's that are not referring in the practice. Are you from that community? Oh, you went to dental school there. Great. Oh, your wife is this and this and that. Tell me a story of how you're connected, how these actually GPs are saying, dude, you got to come up here. This is amazing, great opportunity. They're going to be referring patients to you. I mean, that's that side. That's that mitigating the risk. And I think when we're really talking about here is we're purchasing a practice, and what we're really, trying to sum it up, we're mitigating risk.
Yeah, we're mitigating risk, and we're also, as a business owner, you have to put on your marketing hat and have a plan and make sure you understand, how do I continue this patient base and this practice that I purchased? How do I continue that forward? And I think talking to the seller, ask them, what have you done historically marketing, right? What has worked and what hasn't? And my gut is sometimes you'll hear that they haven't really done as much. They didn't have to, right? They've just kind of lived on internal referrals, which is great, but that just means you have a lot of opportunity.
And I would just, on that, a general rule is that as you get older, you'll start turning off the marketing bucket.
Yep.
It's just
natural.
Advertising bucket, marketing dollars. You just kind of pull back because you're naturally just wanting to slow down. So that's the opportunity, is to see, like you said, what's worked, what not worked, but also for you to be able to bring that marketing hat on to basically drive. We have to have more new patients than the patients that are leaving out the door.
And last point on this before we move to kind of our last topic, I would be remiss if I didn't say, if you're going to spend one marketing dollar, then you need to be able to track if that one marketing dollar got you a new patient. Because being able to say, hey, my patient acquisition cost is X, or I did that campaign, or I took out that flyer, or I sponsored that team and I didn't get anything from it, then you have a choice if I still want to allocate those dollars or if I want to move it somewhere else, right? Spending money without abandon in marketing, rebranding your website, doing all of that, and not to track if it's working is just a waste of money.
One more thing to add to that. So I agree that you're tracking it. And then the next piece is that front desk person who answers that phone has to be a 10.
Yes.
We have to convert that call to a sale.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, did I use the word sale? I mean to a new patient exam. Sorry. Don't want to bring up sales in dentistry at all. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. Yes, we need to convert that new patient into the office for a meeting. And you have to look at that front desk and say, I dare you, call my office right now. He is a 10. They are amazing. You can't ruffle the feathers. She's amazing. She will get you in. She'll figure it out. And she will make me sound like I'm the best dentist in the world. You are looking for that level of training that can be done to that person. Perhaps they already have it. And that level of their commitment back to the practice. And it's authentic. They have to believe in you.
Yeah, agree. So kind of the last topic here, in a transition, there are some things that we build into our negotiations, into the purchase agreement, that kind of help or should help jumpstart this marketing effort for a new buyer and kind of transition of that goodwill. The primary one is a patient notification letter or a referral notification letter, or both, depending on the practice. And this letter, right, the intent of this letter is to notify the patients of the existing owner's departure and the new owner's arrival. It is typically a joint letter. It's typically initially drafted by the seller, and then the buyer will give their thoughts. We've got lots of templates. I've seen all kinds of notifications. I've seen ones that are just postcards. I've seen, and to answer your question, typically it is still a hard copy something. It is still a mailed thing. Even though I know everyone's doing email now, I always get this question, do we still need to mail something? The answer as of today is still yes. I think patients still like getting something. It's get a piece of mail. You're more likely to actually like open that, even if you toss it in the trash after you read it, versus an email that all of our inboxes look the same, right? With like buried emails. And so that patient notification letter, I've seen really basic ones, and I've also seen ones that are really written beautifully that kind of act as like a love letter from the established doctor to the patient saying, thank you for everything you've given me, and here's what I'm doing next. And I can't wait to see you in the office when I come in to get my teeth cleaned. And here's everything you need to know about the new person who's taking over for me. And I've searched for them. And I've seen ones that are just kind of very transactional. And I can tell you which ones I think probably work better, but I'm sure you know. But those letters are what we negotiate as part of the sale that are typically mailed at closing and given to all the active patients.
I love the heartfelt stuff. I definitely want this to be edited finally by the buyer, but obviously the seller needs to kind of tell the story and believe that this is the right person. I love that if we can have a picture of them together, a little hugging it out, no handshaking, but just kind of shoulder to shoulder, big old smiles, just something that really kind of sells the idea of this was a really good thing. But yeah, I think all of that has to be done. It's part of our checklist. I know that when we're going through either seller consulting or buyer consulting that we're having those early conversations. But yeah, ready to get teed up and get at least edited and ready to be mailed right before close is certainly what we're looking for.
And then I typically would also recommend that letter, hopefully it's just one page, be printed, put in a little placard where people are checking in and out just in case they didn't see the email. Sometimes we'll have the established doctor call if there are any like particularly challenging patients or maybe long-standing patients or kind of a certain number. That established doc will sometimes call patients and let them know of the transition and here's what's going to happen. That's especially important in the overlap those first few weeks, maybe first few months after you close. Because if you don't tell anyone about this transition until at close, which is what most people do, then I show up to my appointment and I expect to see Dr. X and I'm seeing Dr. Y. That heads up call from Dr. X saying, hey, I'm going to be there, but Dr. Y is going to be there. It's so great. That can be helpful. On the referral side, this letter is important, but we have a lot of guidelines that we would put into place depending on the number and importance of referrals, where we're actually requiring the selling doc to like take you out to dinner with these referrals and introduce
100%.
you, and really a very warm handoff that can sometimes take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on number of referrals and importance of those.
Yeah, depending on the practice, some of these referrals are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue to the practice. So absolutely, I do not just want a letter. I want a sit-down meeting on a dinner, come to the house around the holidays. We're closing the end of the year, providing all the referral sources for a really nice kind of high-end catered dinner. We want to go all out. I have no problem with that buyer picking up that expense. This is a huge investment kind of back to secure that referral-based business to those key 5, 6A docs are huge. Calling 2,000 active patients, I get it. That's probably not realistic, maybe some of the bigger ones, but the letter's fine. It's going to be a little awkward for 6, 12 months buyers, so just be aware. But the good news is this has been happening for 100 years in the space of dentistry. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's going to work out just fine.
Yeah, and it's funny because short story and then we can wrap, but my dentist was going through a transition and it was clear to me, because I mean, that's what I do, but I don't think it was like obvious to everyone else. It was just like slowly but surely, like old guy stopped coming into my room, young guy came into my room. Then it was like their names were one way and then they switched the other way.
Oh yeah.
And then eventually like the other guy's name just dropped off and it was just new guy's name. And they never sent a letter. I was like kind of surprised by that, but it was a very long transition time and I'm sure maybe some patients got letters. I'm like, I don't really care. But it was just very interesting. But the hygienist, right? Like if you think about this too, this is why it's so important in your team. My hygienist that I see every time was so good about how she talked about new guy, where it was like, okay, I don't really care which one of them at this point, right? And so those team members and kind of that transition, especially if you're doing it in your office with maybe someone who's already in your office, Like, just understand that it's not just one piece of what we've talked about today. It is a collection of all of them done in a very good fluid motion that makes it work.
I think it's so important for the listener to hear what you just said, because the listener is the doctor who's got all of this anxiety built up about the doctor. Dr. A, and I'm not Dr. B. They did this and I'm this. Young, old, male, female, whatever. They're literally going through all these scenarios in their head and makes no sense. As a patient, I hate to tell you this. This is really bad. We don't care. Like, you move, you go on. I'm like, I do care. I miss you. I'm sorry, but who's a new person? Because it's still about me.
Yeah.
I still need my teeth cleaned and I still need my overall dental care. And I don't want to go to someplace else. I kind of like this person. I like the front desk. I like the hygiene. I like everything. I like it down the street. So I'm going to give this person a shot.
Yeah. And what mattered, though, is that nothing changed for me.
Right.
Right? Like, outside of a different doctor, nothing went downhill as far as like how I was treated or how their front desk, or like, you still come in at the same time, you still go here. And if he changed things now, like, I'd probably be like, fine, no big deal. But if I walked in one day and everything had changed and they handled things differently, I might have been like, ooh, this feels weird. And that might have been enough for me on that given day with me being in a bad mood to be like, I'm going to try somewhere else, you know?
I mean, if I'm a patient going through a $25,000 case or something, yeah.
Of course.
I kind of want this guy to finish it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know about this new guy, and I trusted you and did all the research,
Yeah.
and it's a big case,
Yeah.
mouth and my pain and my history and all that. I mean, there's certain patients, of course.
For sure. And certain types of practices too, right? Like, this is not like a one size fits all, like nothing in transition is, but that's important. So I hope that throughout this episode, you learned a little bit about marketing as a new buyer and kind of what to expect if you're a seller. Clearly, every practice is different. Every transition is unique, and that's what we help you with. So again, if you need help or want some guidance on that, or are concerned about that, or maybe have a unique practice, you know how to find our team. But that's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us on episode 143 of Transition Talk. As always, make sure to share the transition love with those who may not know of us yet. And of course, subscribe or if you listen to your podcast. Till next time.
See you guys.